For most of the World Cup's history, a bad offside call or a missed handball in the penalty area was just something fans argued about for decades afterward, with nothing but a grainy replay to settle it. That changed completely in 2018, and by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how VAR rewired the way World Cup matches get decided, why it's still one of the most argued about pieces of technology in the sport, and what's changing again for 2026. If you appreciate this type of content, gently tap that like button. Let's get into it. Start with what VAR actually is, because the name gets thrown around as shorthand for almost any controversial decision, when it's actually a fairly narrow tool with a specific job. VAR stands for Video Assistant Referee, and it's a team of officials sitting in a video operations room, watching every camera angle available to the broadcast feed in real time, with the ability to flag a small number of specific situations to the referee on the pitch. It was never designed to review every decision in a match. It exists to catch what football's rulebook calls a clear and obvious error, a mistake serious enough that letting it stand would change the result of the match. The goal wasn't to make football officiated by committee. It was to give referees a safety net for the small number of moments per match where getting it wrong matters most. Before VAR, the World Cup had already quietly accepted one piece of review technology without much resistance: goal line technology, introduced at the 2014 tournament. It uses a network of high-speed cameras tracking the ball's exact position relative to the goal line. And the moment the ball fully crosses it, the system sends an automatic vibration alert to the referee's watch within about a second. Nobody argues about goal line technology because the question it answers is genuinely binary. The ball is either fully across the line or it isn't, with no room for interpretation, no judgment call, no gray area. It's worth remembering that distinction going forward, because almost everything controversial about VAR exists specifically in the calls that aren't binary the way a goal line decision is. 2018 in Russia was VAR's first World Cup, and it didn't ease into the tournament quietly. The opening weeks produced a record-breaking number of penalties awarded compared to any previous World Cup, largely because VAR was catching contact in the penalty area that referees on the pitch had been missing or simply letting go for decades. Several matches were decided by stoppage-time VAR reviews that overturned the run of play entirely. And pundits spent the entire tournament split between calling it the most accurate World Cup officiating had ever been, and calling it a momentum-killing intrusion into a sport that had functioned without it for over a century. Both of those reactions turned out to be permanent fixtures of the VAR era, not just an adjustment period that would fade once everyone got used to it. The system is only allowed to intervene in 4 categories of decision, and that narrow scope is one of the most misunderstood parts of how it works. It can review goals to check for offside or a foul in the build-up. It can review penalty decisions, both whether one should have been given and whether one given on the pitch should be overturned. It can review straight red card incidents, though not a second yellow card. And it can review cases of mistaken identity, making sure a card goes to the actual player who committed the offense. Everything else, a marginal foul in midfield, a borderline yellow card, a corner kick that should have been a goal kick, stays entirely with the on-pitch officials, no matter how much a broadcast replay afterward suggests they got it wrong. VAR was deliberately built to leave the vast majority of a match's decisions untouched. That clear and obvious error standard is where almost every VAR argument in the sport's recent history actually originates. The phrase sounds like it should produce consistency. Either an error is clear and obvious, or it isn't. But in practice, it asks human officials in a video room to agree on where the threshold sits for what counts as obvious. And different officiating bodies, different referees, and different tournaments have all interpreted that threshold differently over time. A foul that gets overturned in one match can go unreviewed in a near-identical situation a week later. Not because the rule changed, but because the person in the video room drew the line in a slightly different place. The technology removed the excuse of the referee didn't see it. It didn't remove the judgment call underneath the decision. It just moved that judgment call into a back room with more camera angles and more time to deliberate. Handball is the rule VAR effectively forced football to rewrite, because the existing wording wasn't built for the level of scrutiny slow-motion replay made possible. Before VAR, a ball brushing an arm in the penalty area in a way nobody on the pitch even noticed in real time would never have been a talking point. Once every camera angle could be frozen and zoomed in after the fact, accidental handball became one of the most contested phrases in the sport, and football's lawmaking body rewrote the handball law multiple times across just a few years, trying to define exactly how unnaturally a player's arm has to be positioned for an accidental touch to still count as an offense. The rule changes weren't really about handball becoming more common on the pitch. They were a direct response to technology making every handball, no matter how marginal, visible and arguable in a way it never used to be. 2022 in Qatar introduced the next major shift: semi-automated offside technology, which changed how the most contested category of VAR decision actually gets calculated. Instead of officials manually drawing a line across a paused video frame and eyeballing whether an attacker's body part was ahead of the last defender, the system uses a network of cameras tracking up to 29 data points on every player on the pitch, dozens of times per second, combined with a sensor inside the official match ball that detects the exact moment of the kick. The system calculates the offside line automatically and flags a potential offside to the video room within seconds, far faster and, in theory, far more precisely than a human eye drawing a line by hand ever could. It was billed as the technology that would finally make offside calls fast and indisputable. It didn't fully deliver on the indisputable part, and the reason comes down to exactly how thin some of those margins actually are. A toe, a shoulder, a single frame of video. At the level of precision the system now operates at, decisions are increasingly coming down to fractions of an inch, sometimes determined by a single video frame's difference in timing between when the ball was kicked and when an attacker's foot crossed the defensive line. Fans watching a broadcast graphic showing a virtual offside line drawn through a player's shoelace still walk away feeling like the call could have gone either way, even when the underlying technology is more accurate than anything that existed before it. Greater precision didn't eliminate the controversy. It just moved the controversy down to a smaller and smaller margin, where the stakes of getting it wrong by a hair feel exactly as large as they did when the margin was a full body length. There's an irony in that progression worth sitting with. The entire point of building a more precise system was to shrink the room for human error, and it succeeded completely at that specific goal, while simultaneously shrinking the margin fans need to feel aggrieved about down to something as small as a single frame of video. The system got better. The threshold for outrage just got smaller to match it. VAR has changed how the actual game gets played, not just how it gets officiated. Defenders now play with the explicit understanding that a marginal handball or a shove in the box has a real chance of being caught on review, even if the referee on the pitch never sees it, which has measurably changed defensive behavior in the penalty area compared to the pre-VAR era. Forwards, in turn, have become more aware of exactly how far they can push a marginal offside run, knowing the calculation is now precise enough to catch even a genuinely tiny advantage. Coaches build entire pre-match preparation around what kind of contact is likely to draw a review. None of that existed as a real strategic consideration before 2018. It's an entirely new layer of the game that didn't exist for the first 88 years of World Cup history. One change that came directly out of fan and broadcaster frustration with the silent video room problem was giving the referee a visible on-pitch review screen, and eventually, a publicly broadcast explanation of the call once it's made. Instead of a referee jogging to the sideline, putting on a headset, and disappearing into a decision nobody outside the video room can follow in real time. Tournaments since 2018 have steadily added more transparency. The referee's explanation read out over stadium speakers, graphics showing exactly what angle led to the overturn, and in some competitions, a live audio feed of the referee's reasoning broadcast directly to viewers at home. The goal was to make the process feel less like a verdict handed down from an invisible room, and more like a decision fans could actually follow and evaluate for themselves. It helped, but only partially. Understanding why a decision was made doesn't automatically make fans agree with it, and in some cases, hearing the reasoning out loud in real time made the marginal nature of a call even more obvious than a silent wait ever did. From a broadcast and in-stadium perspective, VAR created a problem nobody fully solved. What does an entire stadium of fans, plus a global television audience, actually do for the 90 seconds to 2 minutes a review takes? Unlike a quick referee decision, a VAR review kills the emotional momentum of a goal celebration or a controversial moment in real time, replacing it with a long, silent wait while officials in a separate room make the actual call. Broadcasters added on-screen graphics and review timers to fill the gap. Stadiums added big-screen replays so fans could follow along. But the fundamental tension never went away. The technology that makes the result more accurate is also the technology that makes the live experience of watching it noticeably less fun in the moment. And that trade-off shows up in fan surveys and post-match reactions every single tournament VAR has been used in. It's worth comparing this directly to how the exact same kind of moment played out before VAR existed, because the contrast explains a lot of the lingering resentment toward the technology. In pre-VAR tournaments, a missed handball or an offside goal that should have been disallowed simply became part of the match's permanent history, debated for years afterward in highlight reels and worst referee decisions countdowns, but never actually correctable. Fans of the wrong team carried that grievance indefinitely, with no closure beyond knowing they were right. VAR removed that specific kind of permanent injustice almost entirely, which is a genuine improvement that's easy to undervalue once it stops feeling new. The trade-off is that the in-the-moment frustration of a long review, or a correct but painfully marginal call, now happens inside the same 90 minutes, instead of being deferred to years of after-the-fact debate. Football didn't eliminate controversy by adopting VAR. It just changed when the controversy gets felt, immediately, on the day, instead of slowly over decades. That tension is really the core paradox of the entire VAR era. Officiating accuracy has measurably improved since 2018 by almost every statistical measure football's governing bodies track. And fan trust in officiating hasn't improved anywhere near proportionally. Some of that is simply because a marginal, correctly overturned call still feels unfair to the team it goes against, even when it's the right decision. Some of it is because slow-motion replay and freeze-frame offside lines invite endless second-guessing in a way a referee's split-second-in-the-moment call never did. When a human referee makes a quick decision and the game moves on, fans accept it as part of the sport. When a video room takes 2 minutes to draw a line for a shoelace, it invites exactly the kind of scrutiny that erodes confidence even when the call itself is correct. There's also a financial dimension to all of this that rarely gets talked about alongside the officiating debate, but it's a real part of why FIFA invested so heavily in getting VAR right rather than treating it as an experiment. A single wrongly disallowed goal or a missed penalty in a knockout match can be the difference between a team advancing toward the final, with all the broadcast revenue, sponsorship value, and continued tournament interest that a deep run generates, and a team going home in the first knockout round. Multiply that by the scale of a World Cup's global broadcast rights and commercial sponsorships, and the cost of a single high-profile officiating error is no longer just a footballing problem. It's a financial one that touches broadcasters, sponsors, and the federations themselves. That's a meaningful part of why FIFA was willing to absorb years of criticism over slow reviews and confusing handball calls, rather than abandon the technology and revert to the pre-2018 system. The cost of getting a marginal call slightly wrong on screen is still smaller than the cost of a major decision going uncorrected in a tournament watched by billions of people. For 2026, the technology keeps advancing rather than standing still. The expectation is an even more refined version of semi-automated offside, with faster review times specifically targeted at reducing how long fans and players stand around waiting for a decision, and continued refinement of exactly how the system communicates its findings to fans in the stadium and at home. None of that resolves the underlying tension between accuracy and the live emotional experience of the sport. It just continues to chip away at the speed and presentation problems, while leaving the harder philosophical question: how much technology should be allowed to override a human referee's in-the-moment judgment, just as unresolved as it's been since 2018. The expanded 48-team format adds its own wrinkle here too. More teams, more groups, and more total knockout matches all mean more total opportunities for a marginal VAR call to decide a result, simply because there are more matches in the tournament than ever before for the technology to get involved in. Referees themselves have absorbed a different kind of pressure since VAR arrived, and it cuts in a direction a lot of fans don't immediately think about. Before VAR, a referee's authority on the pitch was essentially final the moment the whistle blew. Right or wrong, the call stood, and the referee carried whatever criticism came afterward alone, but also carried the full weight of the decision-making. VAR introduced a second layer of accountability sitting above the on-pitch official, which means a referee's call can now be publicly overturned by a colleague in a video room, in front of the same stadium and broadcast audience that just watched the original decision get made. That's a meaningful psychological shift for officials who built careers on the idea that their in-the-moment judgment was the final word. Some referees have spoken about feeling like VAR has made them more hesitant to commit to a strong call in real time, knowing a video review is always available as a backstop, which is its own subtle side effect the system's designers didn't fully anticipate when they built it purely to catch missed errors, rather than to change how confidently referees officiate in the moment. What actually happened to World Cup controversy after VAR arrived isn't that it disappeared, it's that it relocated. Before 2018, the controversy was about referees missing things entirely. A handball nobody called, an offside goal that stood because nobody could prove it in real time. After VAR, the controversy is almost entirely about the margins. A toenail offside, a handball debate over how natural an arm's position was, a review that took so long it killed a stadium's atmosphere, even though the final decision was correct. The technology did exactly what it was built to do. It caught the obvious errors. It just turned out that removing the obvious errors didn't remove the arguments. It just made the arguments smaller, more technical, and in some ways even more emotionally charged, because now there's no missed call to blame, just a system that got the marginal call right, and a fan base that still doesn't like the answer. That's probably the most honest way to sum up where the technology actually landed, almost a decade after its World Cup debut, not as a solution to football's officiating problems, but as a trade. Fewer obvious injustices in exchange for a sport that now argues about the smallest possible margins in real time, every single match, in front of the largest audience the game has ever had. The next time a review takes 2 minutes and the stadium goes quiet, that's the trade playing out in real time, one match at a time. And if you want to understand the other rule the World Cup keeps rewriting almost as often as handball, and why the format for settling a knockout match that's still level has changed more times than almost any other rule in the sport. I made a video on exactly that. You can check it out by clicking right here.